This week, we have a special episode interviewing a missions expert. Welcome to the Global Hotspot, where we share updates from missionaries around the world that you might have missed but need to know. I'm your host, John, and this week, we are speaking with Matt Stahlman. He is a former missionary to Malawi, the founder of Beyond Borders Missionary Training Boot Camp, and authored the book, 10 Reasons Missionaries Fail. He now serves as the European Field Director for Macedonia World Baptist Missions.
So my name is Matt Stahlman, and my wife and I started in missions about 1999. We began our missionary journey in Malawi, Africa. Probably we weren't really ready at that age to start out in Africa. We ended up coming home in September 2001. And so by 2006 or so, we had kind of developed a burden for other missionaries, and God had put us with a network of veteran missionaries and allowed us to start a camp called Beyond Borders, where we train foreign missionaries for missionary service.
As church members, how can they support missionaries beyond just the typical, I give faith promise? What are the main ways that we can support a missionary?
So the first thing is, when we look at the human cost of missions, we see that missionaries are just humans. They're tired, they're hungry, they get sick, they have financial problems, they have marriage problems, they have problems raising their children. So outside of the ministry in some hardship land, these are just human beings that are living a normal life. I think, first of all, realizing how fragile they are helps us. They're not superhuman. Missionaries are not perfect. So release them from expectations that are unrealistic. The second thing is learn to pray. Not just pray read their name on the list, but you may not be able to pray for hundreds of missionaries. You might have to have a rotation, and you might just have a few that you really pray for, but pray for them by name, their children by name.
How should people pray for missionaries?
So Romans chapter number 15, verse number 30 actually gives us a good outline. When it says to pray, pray for their safety, pray for their provision, that all their needs are met, for his inner being, that he can have the right attitude, that he can have the right heart, for joy, for a heart that they can not just survive, but they can thrive.
If you want to contact a missionary, what are some things you should think about when you're contacting them and things you should say to them?
That gets tricky because missionaries have very distinct personalities. So there will be a missionary that they want to be in constant contact. So if you text them or send them a WhatsApp or an email, they're going to jump on that and they're going to be right back to you, and you have a conversation. There are going to be other missionaries, they want to know you're praying, they want to hear from you, they want to send you an update, but you don't want your conversation to be a burden to them. So what I would want to do is make sure when I send a message to a missionary, it is an open-ended message. Hey, I was thinking about your family today. I've been praying for you. We care about you. Please let me know if there's something I can do to help or if I can pray, but don't be demanding on them. Some of it's personality, some of it's time restraints, but I think the idea that we're not forgotten, and it's so important to be remembered, because you do feel isolated. It just feels like, man, I'm all alone. I'm the only one here. So sometimes it's just, hey, I remembered you. You're not forgotten. We're praying for you. Reach back out to us. And again, some missionaries are going to strike up that conversation. And some missionaries are just a simple thank you.
But is sitting down and actually writing a letter, is that still something that you think is a good idea?
So that's going to vary depending on location. So there are places in the world right now where if you send a letter, number one, it probably won't arrive. Number two, it can be a hassle to receive. And number three, it can pose security concerns. We want to make sure that if we're writing or sending something, that it has a practical side to that. And that would be something where I would send a text and say, my wife, my daughter, whatever, we like to write. We'd love to write you an encouraging letter. Is that okay? Is that helpful? Can you receive them? Do they make it?
If you want to go visit a missionary, how do you start that process? What are some things you should think about and things you should either do or not do? What's the least burden on the missionary?
The first thing I would do, I'd express to my pastor, say, hey, I'm preparing for a mission trip. So the two following steps are important. I'm going to save money. I'm going to get a passport. All right, so I've got my pastor watching out. He's looking for opportunities. I've got my passport applications in the mail, and I'm saving money. Then you start looking for that mission field. And then I would look for the missionary family, because there are missionary families that are very hospitable and very personable, and then there are some that are very dry and are not going to be great hosts. They might be a great missionary, but they may not be a great host for you. So if you're going to go ready to work. If you're going to go to give and not take. So make sure that if that missionary is picking you up from the airport, that you've covered all of their fuel expenses. If they're feeding you, you've sent money ahead to pay for all of the food. If they're going to have work for you to do, you understand that work and you're prepared for that, whether it's a building project, a painting project, or if it is outreach. So make sure that you're not a burden on them. And then you can relax on a mission trip. Make sure that if you're on this trip, take time to soak in the culture, soak in the food, soak in the language, get to know the people. So it's not just all about work, it's also about experience.
Do you offer to bring the missionary something?
Every time we go to a mission field, we send the missionary an email or a text and say, hey, when we come over, what would you like? And even if they don't have anything, we'll still take them some gifts. But every missionary has his addiction, right? Something they want from the States. Like the last one we just went to, it was honey buns. And I'm like, I like honey buns. I like Hostess honey buns. And they're like, anything but Hostess. So a very specific honey bun request, But usually we'll end up taking an extra suitcase of something that missionary needs that'll be a blessing to them. And it's not that they can't live without it, but it's a token that we appreciate their work there, we understand their sacrifice, and it's been a blessing to missionaries.
If you're interacting with someone who used to be a missionary, whether they failed or just God moved them off the mission field, what are some things that people should do to interact with them and to show them the love and support they need?
Yeah, so usually the condemnation for coming home from the mission field doesn't really come from the church or from the sending family. It usually comes from the missionary's own self condemnation, right? And of course, Satan is the accuser of the brethren. He's the one who really is starting to place these thoughts in his head. So sometimes what we need to do is, if we think as long as we're silent, we're not condemning, but actually silence can be taken as condemnation. If you know the missionary, and if you know their needs, and you know their emotional state, then I think that you can have the wisdom to be able to respond and minister to them. However, if we don't know them well, we could easily contribute to the condemnation, by what we say or what we do.
Is there any other advice or things you want to say about supporting missionaries?
Money is important. Every missionary needs money. However, what we have sort of done is kind of outsourced other responsibilities. Money is no replacement for actual love. And so missionaries need to feel loved and appreciated. So there has to be sincerity. And I think that is sometimes more than money, it's genuine friendship. Genuine friendship with a real friend, I'm able to open my heart. So moving from a supporter to a friend is very important. And it's not something churches are being prepared and trained to do.
You said become friends with missionaries. If you are a friend with a missionary and you know that they're struggling, or you hear, whether they tell you or you hear something, what's the best way to help them?
And this is really a friend conversation and no longer a missionary conversation now, because we've leveled the playing field. So if it's a missionary and I'm talking to them and we've broke through this idea, this barrier that we're different. Okay, now we're just the same. Now we're just two men. When I say to a foreign missionary, I'm talking to them and I'm like, how's it going? They're like, oh, it's good. We had 20 in church. I'm like, no, come on, man. How are you doing? How's your wife? How's the kids? How are you guys doing with the language? How's the stress of driving through town? What's going on? So we dig a little bit deeper. What happens is missionaries sort of hold those things in. So breaking down that barrier and saying, look, we're friends between you and I want to pray for you. And tomorrow when I wake up and I'm praying, how do I pray?
What would you say to women and even kids in churches? Because I know often you think, oh, how can you reach out to the missionary father, the man in the house? What do the women need and what do kids need? Kids
are kind of the hard one, because some kids are so well adjusted. They're able to live in two worlds. They have an American heritage, they have American culture, they're bilingual, they jump into that other world. However, I would say that is rare. I think we need to invite them into inclusion. We need to be patient with them. If they don't understand, especially the little ones, when they're tired, there needs to be some real friendships built there. The women in missions are interesting because there's a idea when we read like Amy Carmichael that a woman is going to go to the mission field and she's going to be rescuing kids, and she's going to be leading these ministries, and she's going to be doing all of this street work. Well, the truth is, if you're married, your ministry in Africa looks a lot like your ministry here. You're going to be raising children, taking care of your husband, cooking meals, planning stuff. And I think there's almost an immediate discouragement that hits a lot of missionary wives because there's this false expectation. And when somebody writes them, they're like, how's the mission field? They're like, I don't know, I change diapers. and so I think we need to recognize that their first and foremost ministry is actually the ministry of wife and motherhood, which is a awesome ministry.
And that goes back to what you started with having the right expectations.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on the Global Hotspot. As always, missionary prayer letters can be found at BibleBaptistFairbanks.com. Past Global Hotspot episodes are also available on the website. And please, don't forget to pray for missionaries around the world this week.